Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I'm really sorry about the delay. There was an issue with technology. Okay. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Hayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajaltam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradhayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the topic today will be the 11th chapter of the first canto of Bhagavatam, when Krishna enters into Dwaraka. Because Krishna had been away from Dwaraka for the duration of the battle on Kurukshetra. Right after the Pandavas came out of exile, Krishna had been with the Pandavas, helping them formulate their allies, their battle strategy. He acted also as a messenger to Hastinapur for the Pandavas to try and negotiate a peace treaty. When that failed, Krishna then assisted the Pandavas in winning the battle. So it's not clear exactly how long he was away from Dwaraka, but he was away for some time. And even after the battle finished, there was a time when Krishna was pacifying Maharaj Yudhishthir, making sure that the Pandavas were okay, attending to Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev's instructions in the Mahabharata, they actually went on for 52 days. Although Bhagavatam only presents the highlight of those instructions. So Krishna was at least away for 2 to 3 months, at least 3 months away from Dwaraka, which for the residents of Dwaraka was a very, very long time. So finally, after pacifying Maharaj Yudhishthir, attending to Mother Kunti's prayers, protecting Parikshit Maharaj, after doing all of those things, Krishna finally left Hastinapur, or the residents of Dwaraka finally allowed Krishna to leave, and Krishna entered Dwaraka. So these verses are extremely special, and in some sense it's like having the 10th canto Bhagavatam in these initial verses. But these verses reveal the mood of the residents of Dwaraka in their relationship with Krishna. And Prabhupada's purports are really exquisite. We will cover the first 15 or so verses in this chapter. And because that's a natural self-contained section in this chapter. Okay. Text 1. Suta Huvacha Anartansa Upavrajya Svrithan Jana Padan Swakan Dhatmau Daravaram Tesham Vishadam Shamayan Hiva. So translation. Suta Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of the Anartas, Dwaraka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival, and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. So the key phrase here is that there are two phrases. One, Krishna came back to Dwaraka. Anartan sa upavrajya, that he has come back to Dwaraka after a long absence. Sridhan here refers to most prosperous. Any place where Krishna is naturally has prosperity. And the residents of Dwaraka, being, eternal associates of the Lord, were always absorbed in Krishna. This comes out in the later part of Prabhupada's purport. And so all opulences were naturally present there. What's interesting is here that Dwaraka is described as being prosperous. When Krishna left Vrindavan, Uddhava went back into Vrindavan. There were two visions that he saw. One of Vrindavan almost withered up and closed down. And there was another vision of Vrindavan where it was open and full of prosperity, happiness, and laughter. And these visions are explained as being the first vision, where Krishna had apparently left Vrindavan. But then the second vision, where Vrindavan was open and full of prosperity and happiness, was the vision where Uddhava happened to see the hidden Vrindavan, where Krishna actually never left. So here, Dwaraka is described as being prosperous. Svridhan, Janapadan. Janapadan refers to city. Swakan, Krishna's personal city. Dhadmau, Dharavaram, Tesham. Dhara means a conch shell, and Vara means the best of conch shells. So Dhadmau means that he's sounded this most auspicious conch shell, because Krishna was extremely conscious of how much the residents of Dwaraka would have missed him, that they were thinking about him almost constantly. So he blew that conch shell to herald his arrival. Look, I'm home, I'm here. I've come back to you. To sound that message, Krishna took out his conch shell and blew it. And he also wanted to reciprocate and engage with all the residents of Dwaraka to ensure that he could engage with them and to bring them together. He sounded his conch shell. Vishadham Shamayan Iva. So Vishadham means moroseness. The residents of Dwaraka were morose in Krishna's absence. They deeply missed him. Shamayan means to Shama means to pacify, to make their emotions equal again, to pacify their dejection. Iva means like pacifying their dejection. Seems to be a strange phrase. Apparently, pacifying their dejection. The idea is, when the conch shell was sounded, the residents of Dwaraka immediately, Krishna is here. And either in this purport or in the next purport, Srila Prabhupada will describe how the sound vibration enunciated by the Lord is identical with the Lord. And one can directly experience Krishna's presence when the sound vibration enters the heart. Prabhupada speaks of this in the context of the holy names. But it also comes about in the pastime in the fifth or the sixth chapter of this canto, where Narada was in the forest, but simply by hearing the voice of the Lord, he was able to fully experience Krishna's presence. So, by hearing the conch shell, they could experience Krishna, and they came alive. So their dejection was taken away. But still, their eagerness to see Krishna increased manifold. So while their senses came alive, their desire to see Krishna personally increased even more. And so it was like their dejection was almost pacified, but not completely. Because their desire to see Krishna was still, personally, was still much higher. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, the beloved Lord was away from his own prosperous metropolis of Dwaraka for a considerably long period because of the battle of Kurukshetra. And thus all the inhabitants were overcome with melancholia in separation, due to the separation. When the Lord descends on the earth, his eternal associates also come with him, just as the entourage of a king accompanies him. Such associates of the Lord are eternally liberated souls, and they cannot bear the separation of the Lord even for a moment because of intense affection for the Lord. Thus the inhabitants of the city of Dwaraka were in a mood of dejection and expected the arrival of the Lord at any moment. So the heralding sound of the auspicious conch shell was very encouraging, and apparently the sound pacified their dejection. They were still more aspirant. The aspiration increased so much so. The conch shell had the simultaneous effect of making them feel happy and more aspirant still. They were still more aspirant to see the Lord amongst themselves, and all of them became alert to receive him in the befitting manner. These are the signs of spontaneous love of God. The ability or their nature, as soon as Krishna came, to simply jump away from whatever they were doing, because all of them were family members. They had their various duties that they were doing during the day, whether that was selling things or cleaning the street or having a meal with their family. And this point comes out later on, where Krishna's personal family also, I mean, everyone here is Krishna's family, but Krishna's immediate family, where they were eating or sleeping or doing something at home, but they just dropped it and went. But that eagerness to jump up and go, as soon as Krishna practically called all of their names by sounding his conch shell, it's only really possible if one lives each day oriented towards pleasing the Lord. It's almost like when our spiritual masters, it's not very often that we get to see them come into Sydney or wherever we stay. But when every part of our day is oriented towards acting according to the instructions and remembering them, as soon as they come, there's an instant eagerness to want to spend time with them, to want to associate with them. There's an incredible amount of excitement. But where our life kind of forms its own separate pool, and in our mind we think we're following our spiritual master's instructions, but we're not. But we formed a separate space for ourselves. At that point, the excitement or the intensity of our desire to go and serve our spiritual master, or to see him and associate with him, to hear from him, is considerably reduced. It's if one spends one's entire life cultivating this deep desire to serve one's guru, and connects every part of one's life to Guru and Krishna, then the desire to go and see the Lord, to go and serve him, to go and take his darshan every day will intensify as time goes on. But to the extent that we start to form our own separate life, to that extent we will also see that our wanting to go and take darshan, our wanting to go and serve the Lord will reduce until we become an occasional visitor to the temple. But the residents of Dwaraka had no one else they wanted to please, no one else they wanted to be with, no one else their life was dedicated to except for Krishna. So Prabhupada says these are signs of spontaneous love of Godhead. The sign of spontaneous love of Godhead is described in a verse in the 3rd canto, which says that Madguna Shruti Matrena Mai Sarva Guhashaye Manogatir Avichinna Yata Gangha Ambaso Umbuda. So this verse says that simply by hearing about Krishna, those with a natural bhakti in their heart, their bhakti in their heart and their very self, it just flows towards Krishna, avichinna, without an obstacle. Just as the forceful flow of the Ganga coming through crashes through obstacles, crashes past any obstructions, and it forms its own way to go into the ocean. But that is the nature of the spontaneous love of God. Any obstacles that are in their way, anything which might be in their way to go towards the Lord, it's simply just like the Ganga. It's almost like if you place a dam, the push of the Ganga becomes more and more intense, and then it smashes the obstacle and goes through. But that's the volcanic nature, the forceful nature of the love of the residents of Dwaraka. And this becomes more apparent as the verses go on. Text 2. So this verse describes, because the previous verse, text 1, described how Krishna blew his conch shell. So text 2 now describes in intimate detail exactly what that vision was like. Sa uchakase davalo daro daro pihuru kramasya dharashona shonima Dhadmayamana karakanja sampute yatabcha kande kalahamsa utsvana. Translation. The white and fat-boweled conch shell, being gripped by the hand of Lord Krishna and sounded by him, appeared to be reddened by the touch of his transcendental lips. It seemed that a white swan was playing in the stems of red lotus flowers. So the highlight of this verse is that the conch shell, which was already beautiful, which was already described in the previous verse as Dharavaram, the best of conch shells, in Krishna's hands, its beauty increased because sometimes there's this analogy that Prabhupada gives that the living entities are sometimes compared to gold and Krishna is compared to a jewel. Together, they appear more beautiful. But the presence of the jewel in that gold chain, it beautifies that entire chain. But Krishna holding the conch shell caused that conch shell, which was already wonderful, to become even more brilliant. So Uchakashi refers to brilliant, extremely beautiful. So Uchakase, it became brilliant. Dhavala Udhara. So Udhara means stomach, actually. Udhara means the abdomen. So in a conch shell, when you have the conch shell shaped almost like an oval, the middle part of the conch shell is rounded. So that's called the Udhara, or the abdomen, or the navel of the conch shell. So it was white and fat-boweled. It had a large stomach. So uchakase dhavalo dharo dharo api urukramasya, of that Lord who performs extraordinary feats. Adhara means the Lord's lips, which are red like the bimba fruit. So this point also comes out in the Damodarashtakam, actually. Urukramasya adhara shona shonima. So when the white conch shell came close to the Lord's lips, the redness of Krishna's lips, it reflected onto the conch shell and gave it a tinge of red. And that increased the transcendental beauty of this conch shell. Pi urukramasya dhara shona shonima dhadmayamana. And the indication of this phrase is that that Krishna constantly and continuously let out loud blasts of the conch shell. Sometimes in the Mahabharata, the blowing of the conch shell was so loud that it caused the entire earth and sky to reverberate with the sound, and everybody would just become stunned. But Dhadmayamana, this sound representing Krishna, it spread and engulfed all of Dwaraka, and as Krishna blew this conch shell continuously, calling every resident of Dwaraka. Karakanja Sampute, being caught by the lotus hand of the Lord. Yatabcha Khande, and here's an analogy that describes what this vision looked like. Yatabcha Khande, just as you have a stem of lotus flowers representing the Lord's lips, perhaps also the Lord's red hands, but here particularly the references towards the Lord's lips. Just as you have a stem of lotus flowers, a collection of lotus flowers, and you have a Kalahamsa, or the king of swans, the Rajahamsa, and just as a swan would surround this clump of lotus flowers, loudly clucking or loudly making its sounds. Similarly, it appeared as if this conch shell was playing around the Lord's lips, relishing the taste of Krishna's lips, and emitting a loud sound, calling the residents of Dwaraka. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada compares the conch shell to ignorance or matter, and how matter can manifest the presence of the Lord simply by contact with the Lord. So here's Prabhupada's purport. The redness of the white conch shell due to the lip touch of the Lord is a symbol of spiritual significance. The Lord is all spirit, and matter is ignorance of this spiritual existence. Factually, there's nothing like matter in spiritual enlightenment, and the spiritual enlightenment takes place at once by the contact of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. The Lord is present in every particle of all existence, and he can manifest his presence in anyone. By ardent love and devotional service to the Lord, or in other words, by spiritual contact with the Lord, everything becomes spiritually reddened, like the conch shell in the grip of the Lord. And the Paramahamsa, or the supremely intelligent person, plays the part of the ducking swan. The phrase ducking, it just implies that just as the duck plays around the lotus flowers, the Paramahamsa plays the part of the ducking swan in the water of spiritual bliss, eternally decorated by the lotus flower of the Lord's feet. Text 3. Tam upashrutya nidanam jagad bhaya bhayavaham pratyudyayu praja sarva bhratra dharshana lalasa. Translation. The citizens of Dwaraka, having heard that sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run toward him fast, just to have a long-desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all the devotees. Because this phrase reveals how the residents of Dwaraka felt about the Lord. Bhratra dharshana lalasa. They were extremely greedy, lalasa. They had been longing for and wanting Krishna's association for such a long time. And Krishna is described here as their bhratra, or their protector. Eagerly greedy for his darshana, which they'd been thinking about, longing for all of these long minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, they began to run. Prati udyayu means they rapidly proceeded. They just left because they were just on tenterhooks. Krishna will come, Krishna will come, Krishna will come. And no matter what they were doing was simply, just with their hands and legs. But their heart was somewhere else. It was, when will Krishna come? When will Krishna come? And in that eagerness, as soon as they heard this sound indicating Krishna's presence and arrival, instantly everything that they were doing, it just dropped and they left. Pratyudyayu praja sarva. Every single one of those residents, there was not a single person in Dwaraka who did not run. One can imagine almost like a stampede, practically speaking. I mean, if everybody's just coming out, it becomes an entire congregation rushing towards Dwaraka's entrance. And the blowing of the conch shell, nidhanam, is the sound, ninadham, is described as removing the fear of everybody, because it can even cause fear for fear personified. So Prabhupada here says, as already explained, the citizens of Dwaraka who lived at the time of Lord Krishna's presence there were all liberated souls who descended there along with the Lord as an entourage. All were very anxious to have an audience with the Lord, although, because of spiritual contact, they were never separated from the Lord. Just as the gopis at Vrindavana used to think of Krishna when he was away from the village for cowherding engagements, the citizens of Dwaraka were all immersed in thoughts of the Lord while he was away from Dwaraka to attend the battle of Kurukshetra. Some distinguished fiction writer in Bengal concluded that the Krishna of Vrindavan, that of Mathura, and that of Dwaraka were different personalities. Historically, there's no truth in this conclusion. The Krishna of Kurukshetra and the Krishna of Dwaraka are one and the same personality. The citizens of Dwaraka were thus in a state of melancholy due to the Lord's absence from the transcendental city, as much as we are put into a state of melancholy at night because of the absence of the sun. The sound heralded by Lord Krishna was something like the heralding of the sunrise in the morning. So all the citizens of Dwaraka awoke from a state of slumber because of the sunrise of Krishna, and they all hastened towards him just to have an audience. The devotees of the Lord know no one else as protector. Once in London, George Harrison of the Beatles, he asked Srila Prabhupada, what does separation from Krishna feel like? And Srila Prabhupada's answer was that imagine, and in London particularly, where you have almost constant rain and the presence of the sun is extremely welcome and people look forward to it. Prabhupada's answer was, it's like imagine you're feeling the full warmth of the sun and then suddenly it goes underneath a cloud and instantly you feel like something is missing. And then when the sun comes out again, you are glad. He said, missing Krishna is a little bit like that. And George Harrison immortalized this in the song, Here Comes the Sun. The song was actually inspired by this analogy. Of course, most people, they think that Here Comes the Sun as a song refers to Britain in the winter months. As they reach the end of winter, they're welcoming the sun enter into London. But George's actual purpose was to describe that sense of what it feels like to come in front of the Lord's presence after an extended period of absence. Prabhupada continues, the sound of the Lord is identical with the Lord, as we have tried to explain by the non-dual position of the Lord. Material existence of our present status is full of fear. One of the four problems of material existence, namely the food problem, the shelter problem, the fear problem, and the mating problem, are out of the four problems. The fear problem gives us more trouble than the others. We're always fearful due to our ignorance of the next problem. The whole material existence is full of problems, and thus the fear problem is always prominent. This is due to our association with the illusory energy of the Lord, known as Maya or external energy. Yet all fear is vanished as soon as there is the sound of the Lord, represented by His holy name, as it was sounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the following 16 words. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We can take advantage of these sounds and be free from all threatening problems of material existence. Text 4 and 5. So with these two verses, the first 5 verses of this chapter set the scene for how the residents of Dwaraka approached Krishna and started offering prayers. Tatropanita balayo raver deepam hivadritam atmaramam purnakamam nija labena nityada priti utfula mukha prochur harsha gadgadaya gira Pitaram sarva suhritam avitaram nivarvaka. Translation. The citizens arrived before the Lord with their respective presentations, offering them to the fully satisfied and self-sufficient one, who by his own potency incessantly supplies others. These presentations were like the offering of a lamp to the sun. Yet the citizens began to speak in ecstatic language to receive the Lord, just as wards welcome their guardian and father. So they approach Krishna. Pitaram Ivarbakaha. Arbaka means wards or children, and Pitaram means father. Just as children approach their father, the previous verse described Krishna as being their only protector. And their mood of relating to Krishna was that of the son to the father. That was their specific mood of relationship. When they approach Krishna, Priti Utfula Mukha, meaning with happiness, their entire face like a lotus flower, it blossomed with happiness and love. Harsha Gadgadaya Gira, they were so happy that Gira, their voice, was choking with happiness. And even though Krishna is Atma Rama, that he is completely satisfied in himself, he's Purna Kamam, his any desire is automatically fulfilled. Nija Labhena Nityada, he can constantly, he's the one who constantly supplies to everybody else. So even though he himself is satisfied, he can fulfill any of his own desires, and he is the one who gives others anything that they want. Still, the residents of Dwaraka came and started presenting their offerings. Offerings both in terms of their face laden with affection, with their voices showing their intense attachment for the Lord, and any of the offerings that they had. The offerings are described in the later part of this chapter. But Tatra Upanita Balayog. Bali here means an offering. So usually Bali is mentioned in the context of yajna performance, where you have a yajna and then there's a Bali, which is a sacrificial item meant for the sacrifice. But here, yajna personified was present. And so they were directly offering their hearts and everything they had to Krishna. And everything they had is compared to Raver Deepam Ivadritaha, that just as a worshipper of the sun offers a lamp to the sun, similarly, they were offering everything that they had to Krishna. This analogy is given because the fire of a lamp, its potency really comes from the sun. And when they were offering this lamp to Krishna, it was like they were offering what Krishna had given them back to him. Because what else can anybody else do? Sometimes the example is also given of offering the water of the Ganga back into the Ganga as a means of worshipping the Ganga. But it's Krishna who gives us anything. And when a child takes even a little bit of what the father gives and offers it to the Lord, then the father becomes extremely pleased. And here, the residents of Dwaraka offered everything they had with all of their affection and emotion back to Krishna. Of course, here the word Atmarama is used, that Krishna is satisfied in himself. However, it should also be noted that Krishna is not independent of his devotees. So the word Atmarama is used generally, but Krishna is actually deeply attached to and dependent on his devotees. So these devotees here are his eternal associates. And as much as they desire to see him, Krishna also desires to see them. In the Stotra Ratna of Yamunacharya, this is mentioned, where Yamunacharya says, Sakritvad akara vilokanasya trini kritan uttama bhukti muktibi mahatma bir mam avalokitam nayakshane pite yad virahati duhusaha. He says, my dear Lord, please place me in the glance, in the path of the glance of your devotees, who in their eagerness to see you, who in eagerness to see your form, they consider sense gratification and liberation to be like straws on the street, and from whom separation is completely unbearable, even for you. So this verse specifically states that Krishna feels deep separation from his own devotees. So in that sense, Krishna is not Atmarama at all. But these eternal associates of the Lord are either also part of the internal energy or inspired by the internal energy of the Lord. So that doesn't negate his Atmarama position, but he is certainly dependent on his eternal associates. So the next 5 verses, they describe the prayers of the residents of Dwaraka towards the Lord. And these prayers are really, really extraordinary. Text 6. Nata smate nata sadangri pankajam virincha vairincha surendra vanditam parayanam shemam mihechatam param nayatra kala prabhavet param prabhu. The intent of this verse, or the main focus of this verse, is to describe that Krishna's lotus feet are the supreme shelter, completely above the material world. That's the intent of the verse. Translation. The citizen said, O Lord, you are worshipped by all demigods like Brahma, the 4 Sanas, meaning the 4 Kumaras, and even the King of Heaven. You are the ultimate rest for those who are really aspiring to achieve the highest benefit of life. You are the supreme transcendental Lord, and inevitable time cannot exert its influence upon you. So, Nata Smate Nata, O Lord, we offer our respectful, we fall straight down, offering obeisances to your Angri Pankajam, to your lotus feet. Now the lotus feet of the Lord are described. Virincha, Brahma, Vairincha, sons of Brahma, such as the four Kumaras, etc., Narada, and all of Brahma's sons, Kashyapa, etc. Virincha, Vairincha, Surendra, the king of heaven, what to speak of the rest of demigods, Vanditam. We offer respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet, which are praised by everybody in this material world, the greatest of demigods, the greatest of sages. Parayanam, Kshemam, Ihechatam Param, those very lotus feet are the ultimate shelter, Param Parayanam. And for Shemam Ihechata, for those who desire the highest benefit, they are the supreme shelter, Param Parayanam. Even for those who desire anything in this world, whether it is any kind of shemam, any kind of benefit, either it might be liberation or it might be any kind of enjoyment in this world. But your lotus feet are the supreme shelter. People can go to other shelters, but those other shelters are also dependent upon your lotus feet. Because, demigods, Virincha, Vairincha, Surendra Vanditam, by their prayers, they get the power to bestow benedictions. So therefore, your lotus feet alone are the supreme shelter for any desire. Na yatra kala prabhavet, and there, in the shelter of your lotus feet, there is no influence of time. Para Prabhu. So we, O Lord, and the intent of the verse is, your lotus feet are the supreme shelter. And we offer obeisance to your lotus feet, which are praised by everybody, which are the supreme shelter for anyone with any desire, including liberation, which is completely above material existence. So it's glorification of the Lord's lotus feet. Text number 7. Bhavhayanastvam bhava vishva bhavana tvameva matata suhritpati pita tvam sadgururna paramam cha devatam yasya nuvritya kritino babhuvima. And the intent of this verse says that, O Lord, we have taken shelter of your lotus feet. Please bless us with your association. That is the intent of this verse. Translation. O Creator of the universe, you are our Mother, Well-Wisher, Lord, Father, Spiritual Master, and worshipful deity. By following in your footsteps, we have become successful in every respect. We pray, therefore, that you continue to bless us with your mercy. So this, in text 7, the first line, Bhavhaya nastvam bhava vishva bhavana. O Lord, you are Vishva Bhavana. You are not only the creator, but you are the well-wisher of the entire universe. Please think about our welfare also. Please give us your mercy. Bhavaya, for welfare, naha, us. From your Lordship, Bhava. Please, please think about our welfare. Please give us our welfare. O Vishva Bhavana. O one who looks after the entire universe. And what are the residents of Dwaraka asking for? Their welfare is in Krishna's association. They only want Krishna. And to show this point, the rest of the verse says, you are our mother, Tvam eva mata, Ata, and Suhrit, our well-wisher, Pati, our husband or master, Pita, our father. You are our mother, our father, our well-wisher, our friend, everything. Tvam Sadguru, you are our spiritual master. Naha, for us, Paramam cha Devatam, our supreme deity. Yasyanu Vritya, following in your footsteps, we have become successful in every respect. So, O Krishna, when we are asking for your welfare from you, We are not asking for anything else outside of you. We only just want you. That is the intention of this verse. So Prabhupada in this purport, he says, the all-good personality of Godhead, being the creator of the universe, also plans for the good of all good living beings, Vishwa Bhavana. The good living beings are advised by the Lord to follow his good advice, and by doing so they become successful in all spheres of life. Yasyana Vritya Kritino Babhuvima. There is no need to worship any deity but the Lord. The Lord is all-powerful, and if he is satisfied by our obedience unto his lotus feet, he is competent to bestow upon us all kinds of blessings for the spiritual execution of both our material and spiritual lives. Text 8. Aho sanata bhavatasma yadvayam traivishnapānām api dhūra darshanam prema smita snigdha nirikshananam paschima rupam tava sarva saubhagam. And the intent of this verse, because the first verse said, O Lord, we take shelter of your lotus feet, which are the shelter of everyone and everything. And the text 7 said, O Lord, please give us the mercy of your association. And text 8 says, O Lord, we have become successful now that we have attained your association. Aho sanata. Sanata means I now have a master. So there is a prayer by Yamunacharya where he says that by traveling, by just simply dealing with my own mind and therefore traversing throughout the entire universe, I have become anatha, an orphan. I don't have a master. I don't have shelter, because the mind is not a shelter. And in this verse, Yamunacharya prays, when will that time come when I will actually be sheltered at your lotus feet, and I will relish sanata jivitam, a life where I have a parent, a life where I have shelter, a life where I have a master. So here they're saying, bereft of you, we felt lost, but now we've become successful because you have manifested before us. We have become successful. Aho sanata, oh, our master, our Lord, our Father, our everything. Bhavatasma yadvayam traivishtapanam api dhura darshanam. So now that we see you, impossible even for the demigods, traivishtapanam, even those residing across the 3 planetary systems, across the demigods, you are impossible. Dhura darshanam. Dhur se darshan hota hai. I mean, they stand at the bank of Svetadvip Ocean and they see you from a distance. But even that, they see it with great difficulty. Dhura darshanam, with great difficulty, with great endeavor. From a distance, they see you. But now that we see you, and then Krishna's, what they see is described. Prema smita, that Krishna was smiling with prema, with love. Snigdha nirikshananam. And he was, his smita means smile, snigdha means, smita means glance, and snigdha, smita means glance, nirikshananam means glance, and smita means smile. So he was smiling with love and he was glancing with affection. Both were going together, a glance of affection and a smile of love. And it was reciprocating with every single one of the residents of Dwaraka who was present there. And everybody, according to their specific relationship, was experiencing this in their own unique way. Prema smita snigdha nirikshananam paschema rupam. Now that we see your form, tava sarva saubhagam, endowed with all auspicious qualities. We have become successful now that we see your sweet smile, laden with prema, laden with affection. and your affectionate glances, we have achieved complete perfection. Text 9. Yadhi ambu jaksha pasasara bho bhavan kurun madun vata suridhi drikshaya tatrabda koti pratimakshano bhavet ravim vinaksho rivanastavachuta. O Lord, the intent of this verse is to say that, O Lord, when you leave us, every moment becomes like a million years or more. So Yadhi, whenever, Ambujaksha, O lotus-eyed one, Apasasara, you go away. Where do you go? Kurun, to the place of the Kurus, that is either Hastinapur or Indraprastha. Madhun means Mathura. Here actually doesn't mean Mathura precisely, because all the residents of Mathura had come to Dwaraka. So Madhun here refers to Vrindavan, which is located within the Mathura district. So whenever you go to Hastinapur or whenever you go to Vrindavan, Surit Drikshaya, to meet your well-wishers or relatives or family there. Tatra Abda Koti, at that time, it becomes like millions and millions of years. Pratima Kshana, a few moments or a single moment becomes like many millions of years. And it feels like our eyes have become completely dead. Ravim Vina Akshnor. Our eyes become bereft of their sun. Our eyes become bereft of their guide. We feel completely lost. We don't know where to look or where to go. We don't know what to do. We feel lost completely without you. Navanas, Tava. And why? Because Tava, we are yours. We are Tava. It means we belong to you. Achyuta. Achyuta, we belong to you and we belong to you only. We have nowhere else to give ourselves to. So if you leave us and go, where do we go? What do we do? We have no place, we have no hope, we have nothing that we can do with ourselves. Our acharyas actually say that this verse also indicates that Krishna, after leaving Vrindavan, did go back to Vrindavan. Because this verse says, Kurun Madun Vata, that Krishna went back to Hastinapur, Kurun, and Mathura, meaning Vrindavan. He went back to Vrindavan. So even though the Bhagavatam doesn't directly describe this, Krishna sent back messengers to the gopis when he was leaving Vrindavan, even as he was leaving Vrindavan, to reduce their feelings of separation. Constantly, throughout the journey that Akrura was taking him on from Vrindavan to Mathura, Krishna sent back messengers at intervals, I'm coming back, I'm coming back. Otherwise, he was afraid that they would leave their bodies or give up their life. And some people say that Krishna broke his promise. But actually, this verse says that Krishna did not break his promise, that Krishna actually did go back. Kurun Madan Vata, the resident of Dwarka says, whenever you go to Mathura or whenever you go to Vrindavan or Hastinapur, he didn't go to Mathura per se, because all the residents of Mathura were already in Dwarka. Text 10. This is the last of their prayers. Katam vayam nata chiroshite tvayi prasanna drishtya kilata pashoshanam jive mate sundaraha shasobitam apashyamana vadanam manoharam. And then the second of these two verses, it says, it's a conclusion to these prayers. And Sutta Goswami continues talking. Iti chodirita vacha prajanam bhakta vatsalaha shrinvano nugraham drishtya vitanvan pravishatpuram. So the last of the prayers says, Katam vayam nata chiroshite tvayi. You are almost always abroad, O Lord, and we are bereft, prasanna drishtya, of your sweet smile, kilatapa shoshanam. We are completely bereft of your sweet glance, which akilatapa shoshanam, which is capable of destroying all of the miseries of this world. Jive mate sundaraha shobhitam. How can we live without the sweetness of your smile, of your glance? Apashyamana vadanam manoharam. How can we live without seeing you, your lotus face, which is the only resting place of pleasure for the mind? Our mind is only attracted to you. Our eyes are always searching for you. The phrase manohara indicates that their mind is always searching for Krishna. And prasanna drishtya kiratap, that indicates their eyes are always looking for Krishna. Every one of their senses can only come alive when they experience Krishna. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse in the 2nd chapter that says, Yanisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sanisha paschato mane. So there, the indication is given that those whose senses are materially inclined, these senses come alive when they are engaged in matter. But for those whose senses are alive when it comes to Krishna, their senses are completely dead when it comes to matter. They only come alive when Krishna is present. So in this case, all of their senses only come alive when it comes to Krishna, and without that, they actually can't live. Krishna is their eyes. Krishna is the only thing their mind searches for, and Krishna and their life is only there to see, to please, and to feel Krishna's affection and reciprocation. So then this verse concludes, Iti chodi rita vacha prajanam bhakta vatsala. So hearing these words of affection by his praja, his personal praja, citizens. Of course, everyone are ultimately Krishna citizens, but hearing these words by his personal citizens, prajanam bhakta vatsalaha, that Krishna, who is very kind to his devotees, shrinvana anugraham drishtya vitanvan pravishat puran. So hearing this, Krishna, who is very, very kind to his devotees, he simply glanced at them, and distributing his anugraham, his mercy, by glancing at each and every single one of them, pravishat puram, he entered the city. So all of this took place at the very outset. So the general citizens of Dwaraka greeted him in this way. How his specific, more personal or intimate associates greeted him will be described subsequently. But even after Mother Kunti offered a long string of prayers, some 40 or so prayers, Krishna merely smiled. And here, after the residents of Dwaraka spoke out their heart, Krishna again, he smiled, and with his eyes, he glanced at everyone, bestowing mercy. You know, when the early residents, early devotees in ISKCON, they would work day and night to please Srila Prabhupada. After working day and night for weeks and perhaps months or even years, they would be satisfied by a simple glance of a smile by Srila Prabhupada. In this one smile, Prabhupada or Krishna here completely accepted all the service that was rendered and gave affection. In the reciprocation of the Lord with the residents of Dwaraka, it was understood that all of the individual moods of affection that each of the residents of Dwaraka had, they were completely accepted by the Lord. And Krishna, by glancing at each and every single one of them, completely and perfectly reciprocated and satisfied each of the residents present there. And reciprocating with all of them, with hundreds and thousands and how many countless residents who appeared there, reciprocating with each and every single one of them perfectly and completely, with simply a smile, simply his glance of mercy, Krishna entered Dwarka. Our time is up. And the next 5 verses describe what Dwarka looks like. It's a very, very special description. So thank you so much for this time together. This chapter is extremely special and one of the most special sections of the first canto of Bhagavatam. We will stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
She said Puri and Navadvip, they're like two rooms in the same house. Even though she said this, it's still a rather long distance to travel.